Have you ever found yourself in a situation that just felt impossible? Like you had absolutely nothing left to give? Well, today we're jumping into this incredible story from the Book of 2 Kings, and it's all about finding a miracle right when it seems like all hope is gone.
Really, at its core, this story is for anyone who's ever felt like they've hit the end of the line. You know that feeling. It's about that moment of just total desperation. And then discovering, amazingly, that the answer might just be hiding in the one small thing you thought was worthless.
All right, so let's meet the person at the center of this whole thing. We don't even know her name, which is pretty powerful in itself. All we know is that she was a widow and her life was completely falling apart. She was facing a crisis that was about to take everything from her. I mean, just look at this. It's one tragedy piled on top of another. First, her husband is gone, her partner, the family's provider. On top of that heartbreak, she is drowning in debt with no way to pay it back. And the result of that debt, the most terrifying part, her 2 sons are about to be dragged away and sold into slavery. This isn't just a tough spot, it's the absolute collapse of her entire world. And this is where we get to a really important idea. Let's be honest, from a human point of view, her situation was hopeless. There was no one coming to rescue her. Her dead end actually becomes the starting point for something amazing. It's in those moments, when all the other doors have closed, that a totally different kind of help can finally break through. So, in her desperation, the widow goes to the prophet Elijah for help. And his response is probably not what she or any of us would expect. He doesn't pull out a bag of money. He doesn't offer some grand solution. Instead, he asks this one simple question that completely changes everything. Just stop and think about that question for a second. In the middle of this overwhelming crisis, with everything being taken away, he asks her to look at what she has. It's a question that completely flips the script. It forces her to shift her focus away from the giant problems and onto her resources, no matter how tiny they might seem. And her answer is just, wow, it's almost devastating to hear. She says, I have nothing at all except a small jar of oil. Can you feel that? A mountain of debt that's about to steal her children, and all she has to her name is one little pot of oil. It seems completely and utterly insignificant. But this, right here, is the key to the whole story. The miracle didn't just pop out of nowhere. It started with what she already had in her house. That tiny, overlooked jar of oil, that was the seed. And it teaches us something so powerful. Even the smallest thing we have, when we offer it up, can become the pipeline for a massive blessing. So, okay, she has her one small resource, but just having it isn't enough. To unlock what it can do, she's given a list of instructions that, frankly, sound a little nuts. This is the moment where her faith really gets put to the test. Think about how strange this must have sounded. First, go ask your neighbors for every empty jar they have. I mean, imagine how humbling that must have been. Then, go inside, shut the door. This was going to be a private act of faith, just between her sons, and God. And finally, the craziest part, start pouring from your one tiny jar into all these big empty ones. Logically, it makes 0 sense. But her obedience was everything. And this is where that simple act of obedience leads to something absolutely mind-blowing. She does exactly what she was told, and what happens next? Well, it's the moment we've been waiting for. As she starts to pour, the oil just keeps coming. It completely defies the laws of physics. It fills the first jar, then the second, then the third. It's this supernatural river of provision flowing from this tiny little source, and it doesn't stop until every single jar she collected is filled to the very top. But here's the really fascinating part. Do you know why the oil stopped flowing? It wasn't because God's supply ran out. Oh no. As you can see, that source was limitless. The miracle only stopped when she ran out of empty jars to fill. The only limit was her capacity to receive, which was determined by how much she prepared in faith. So with all this oil, she's able to sell it, pay off all her debts, and save her sons from slavery. And she even had enough left over for her family to live on. It's an incredible ending. But what does this story from thousands of years ago have to say to you and me today? I think it leaves us with some pretty clear lessons. First off, when crisis hits, make God your first call, not your last resort. Second, never ever look down on the small things you have. That little talent, that small resource, in the right hands, it can be multiplied like crazy. Third, real faith shows itself in action, in obedience, even when we don't fully understand why. And finally, We have to prepare our empty vessels. We have to make room and get ready for what we're asking for. When you boil it all down, the message is really this simple. When we take our little, whatever that is, whatever feels totally insignificant, and we place it in God's hands, He can and will make it more than enough. Ultimately, this story is a beautiful picture of transformation. It shows us a God who doesn't just fix our problems, but who specializes in taking the very places of our emptiness, our weakness, and our lack, and turning them into sites of fullness, strength, and incredible abundance.